Hey guys, Bolt here. Let me just put this closer to me because it's probably going to sound pretty far away if I don't. Anyways, we're here for the kind of like talk of the multiverse for Five Nights at Freddy's. So, a lot of issues that are coming up now, especially with the Secret of the Mimic coming out, um, people can't tell that there is a multiverse half the time. So, straight up, there's like I think there's like five ish multiverses at this point. Universes for the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. Because we have the movies, we have the games, we have the Silver Eyes trilogy, the novels. We got the like Goosebumps stories. We have that includes the Fazbear Fright stories and the Tales from the Pizzaplex. Those are from the same universe because there's a we'll actually get into the talks of why they're the shared and all that. So games, books, movies. I'm pretty sure there's a fifth one. I mean, I guess there's a few things like I guess you can say Five Nights at Freddy's World is technically on its own too because it was trying to add to the universe. I mean, it might still be connected to the games. We don't know, but I would say that you could call the world Five Nights at Freddy's World a separate universe. It's just it's getting in the game. It's saying that the actual like main series is um, starting to affect the Five Nights at Freddy's world. Um, and then I guess you can also there's the Faz Bear Fanverse, which is technically officially associated with the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. It's just kind of what if those buildings like oh candies and all that still existed. But anyways, I wanted to kind of get into talks. So why I needed to mention this is because a lot of people can differentiate differentiate between them also difference. Like for example, in the movies, actually William Afton, like the big like figures of the universe, have different things in each thing. Like William Afton in the movie so far, he shows up, he uses the spring Bonnie suit, kills the kids that are in the animatronics. Um, he uses them by trying to like befriend them because they think Spring Bonnie's their friend. They can't tell that it's the killer. I think Golden Freddy knew. And then we're also kind of seeing that the toy animatronics get out in the second one. Not to mention Mike Schmidt is like a separate whole character. While in the games, it looks like Michael Afton is Michael Afton, who in the games is looking like the true identity of Mike Schmidt. So it looks like in the movies, Mike is not related to William, and William in the movies has a daughter named Vanessa, where in the games it's not Charlie, uh, Elizabeth, who takes over baby. Um, Not to mention, it's kind of just like in the trailer that we recently seen last week. They mentioned that Fnaf 2's location is the original, and I also think that's kind of something we don't have a full context on. I believe it's the first Five Nights. It's the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So I think there was still Fredbear's before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It's just I think this was the start of Fazbear Entertainment's startup, while Fredbear's was kind of like the little mom and pop shop kind of feel versus Freddy's, which became a huge hit, became a franchise, and all that. The fact that it also mentions that it franchises out also kind of means that we could have more stuff in it. But it's kind of just the biggest thing is that so far we don't have any Henry context or anybody else. We don't have anyone else helping build up Freddy's at the moment. We only see that William is the owner of the buildings. He uses it to kill the kids and blah blah blah. Where in the games, it's still confusing what's all happening. But William looks like he's had the business up for a good while. He has 3 kids. He's got Henry by his side, which I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a Henry because it looks like Charlie's still a part of the movie universe. Um, because I think we see her actor, which a lot of people's theory for Garrett, the little brother to Mike, being the puppet, has been thrown out. Even though that would have been perfect as a little twist for this universe, but I think they're trying to kind of explain the games while showing the movies, but not being accurate to the games completely, which confuses a lot of people too. Um, so it's like the movies is mostly Mike Schmidt being the big difference, on top of it doesn't look like we have too much understanding of who's in where and what. Um, then the game is kind of just like, it's bigger. It's got huge like lore that we have yet to find. The Silver Eyes is pretty clean. Like, it's Henry and William started the business. They started Fred Bears. Then they made Freddy's. William kills the 5 kids. Henry goes on to go try to recreate his daughter by robotics, which I'm happy that we have yet to see that come into any other universe. The robot child, which I'm still laughing that Matt Pat was like, "No, guys, this is my ship. I will burn on my ship. I will go down with my ship." Um, and so it's like robot kids, and um, it's also the thing of like Williams like motivation changes a lot in the books, where at first he's just trying to like be around to kill more, then he becomes Springtrap, and like he loves the idea of being immortal, and you know, feels like he's become more as Springtrap, and then like eventually he gets himself back to his body and does some weird remnant experiments to make himself whole again. And instead of staying immortal in the Springtrap, he now he now wants to be forever conjointed with the other spirits of the 5 missing kids. Um, so it's just like William's situation, on top of we don't have a full understanding from the comics of those, where like it looks like Henry and William, they look very similar. So it's like, are these guys related in some way in the comics or the Silver Eyes universe period? Is that what we're trying to get at? Or like cousins or something? We don't know. So we're gonna pull an Adrian and Felix with Henry and William, but yeah. So they have that going on for them, and then the biggest conversation I gotta do and finish up before I gotta get off here because I gotta start streaming is the Tails slash Pizza Fazbear Frights. Fazbear Frights slash the Tales from Pizza Plex. So straight up, it looks like they're from the same universe because in the very first story, there's a locket that was given to. There is a story that includes this version of Baby, which I forget what her name is in this one. It's not Baby, it's Eleanor, I think it is. Eleanor. And she basically slowly pulls apart this girl as she sleeps, makes her body into a meat suit for herself. So pulls a sister location little by little, and then gives her this heart-shaped locket that keeps her together. And she's just a pile of junk. And once she removes that, which is probably filled with remnant. Once she removes that, she falls apart. Her consciousness moves on, and Eleanor or Baby walks away with her body as her. That locket returns in the first story where a girl gets a hold of it. Has a very similar situation to the girl from that first story, and every time she cuts a sliver, a sheet starts falling apart. But she heals people with that the slivers, but it's very similar to the first girl. So it's just that the locket exists. So the fact that that little necklace slash locket is in both, you gotta say that it exists. That they gotta be in the same existence at least. Um, but the thing that a lot of people are not understanding about the difference. So if those are the same universe, okay, where's the giant amalgamation of Springtrap or like the Metal Rabbit? So in that universe, William Afton is only kind of not mentioned. He isn't by name, but he's kind of existent. There is the Into the Pit story, which we got a game for, which is to kind of go over that Remnant can show you the memories of anyone who happened by it. And we get to see the missing children's incident, and it's kind of like the existence of William, or like the memory of a monster is what exists. So at least Spring Bonnie and the murderer from that are existent in this universe. But we do kind of get an idea that that same murderer goes on to kill a lot more, and we find the kid with a pig mask haunting and keeping alive that murderer in a hospital room. And this guy's, is like the man from some kind of room, and a pastor comes in and is told to like basically exorcise him, or do something for him to get him lost. And a lot of people think he's haunted, which is true. But basically, it's shown that the kid is like trying to keep him alive, which is very Cassidy slash the Golden Freddy spirit. Vengeful to attach and try to keep him alive, similar to Ultimate Custom Night. And he's like burned and all that, and at the very end of that story, he gets transported to a factory or like a storeroom, or like a warehouse for like Fazbear products, and he just basically blows up all his DNA, which is Agony and Remnant, gets put up against all these other like products, and we do get to deal with some of the products that have his stuff all over the place. But eventually, at the very like end of the story, there's a Stitch Wraith, which is supposed to be kind of like the innard, but it's also kind of like explaining that two souls can be a part of the same like entity, and one is the vengeful spirit who stuck to him, while the other is a guy that a kid that had a very nice life, but he was staying around until a purpose was met. He eventually moves on, while the vengeful spirit sticks around, tries to finish it up, melts all, like gets rid of all the things that he can. But all the products eventually come together. Eleanor tries to be a part of that situation too, and it accumulates in basically the William Afton of that universe coming back in as a giant robot rabbit. So it's just like a lot of this stuff, it's not mentioned. We don't get to see it. It's something that if it happened, it needs to be brought up, or like I need the red string on a board, because it doesn't have any kind of context in the actual games that William Afton comes back after the Ultimate Custom Night. While there is like hints that he may be a part of Help Wanted, I think that's supposed to be just a mimic at this point. I think it may have originally at some point been his spirit, but I think it's just been turned into mimic. But another thing that is starting to like confuse people is that the mimic stories of Tales are supposed to tell the story of how and why, and it does tell a similar story to The Secret of the Mimic, but there's a lot of issues that come across is like Fiona, his wife, um, Edwin Murray's wife, the creator of the suits and all that. She dies in childbirth, where she in the games dies to the fires at Fall Fest. Um, David, it looks like he kind of looks like he may have died. Like in the books, he dies by a car or a vehicle, but in the game, it's really sounding like by some little context clues, it looks like the mimic may have done something to push his fate. It also really sounds like instead of just a vehicle, it sounds like he went into like the delivery area and like heavy equipment did something to him. And then the biggest part would be Murray himself. In the books, he makes a vacuum, gets a good company going, gets pretty popular, but once all the vacuums are distributed, he can't do that again. He hit money and he tries to go big and do all this and that, but eventually he just has he basically bankrupts himself. And Fazbear comes in, buys out his company, buys out his services, and now he's got to work for them. And he's got to live at the factory that used to be his company. And he now makes the costumes that eventually become animatronics. Well, makes he makes them from costume to animatronic in the books, where it looks like he makes the costumes where eventually people like Henry would turn them into to animatronics, or he would. I think spring locks were made by Murray in the games, so eventually he would have made them into animatronics, or at least like in the very end of the parachute ending, it looks like he prototypes it. Uh, and another thing is just it looks like he does die pretty early on, where in the books he leaves after doing damage to the mimic. He leaves, comes back, and then dies by Pizzaplex time, where it kind of sounds very much like he may have died. Not very close. I think it's been a few months, but it looks like the mimic kills him in his office by the explosion. And then also another thing that I mentioned during my summary of the Secret of the Mimic story, uh, Mimic 1 and 2 are very similar but different. In the books, Mimic 1 is just the endoskeleton that goes on a murderous rampage, while the Mimic 2 is a program made by, I think it is Fazbear, that is developed to just copy anything, and it does take some of those tendencies that are aggressive. Uh, we see this with very important Pig, and we also see that with Glitch Trap. That it looks like Mimic 2 is kind of just something that's taken an aggressive side, similar to Mimic 1, where Mimic 1 and 2 from the games so far, it looks like that Mimic 1 was made to take over Fiona's personality. Then it tries to push Murray to make David as a robot, which is what Mimic 2 is made for. But while the development happens, actually David died before Mimic 2 is made. So it's kind of like he's starting while Fiona is kind of, I think Fiona possessed or something, because the Mimic 1 program was not made until after the death of Fiona, but yet Murray's able to find radio waves or some kind of signal that's repeating her. So I think he either made something, or the spirit or of Fiona started possessing some of the stuff, which is very possible. Even though she died at Fall Fest, people like there is Chica's ghost returned to her home to kind of like have time with her sister and mother before getting taken back to the restaurant by Chica. So it's very possible that Fiona at some point was trying to be there for Murray, but eventually either moved on or Spirit returned to Fall Fest stuff. Um, or he's even still sticking around, but the programming of Mimic One is kind of overdoing her. Because that's another thing that we see in A Week Before, where yes, the spirit exists; it can manipulate things, but uh, the "It's me" line is actually basically the only thing that they can say is stuff that the animatronic is programmed to say. So when Ralph, the phone guy, is dying, I think it's a smell or something, and it's basically he can't vocalize everything he's feeling and seeing and smelling and all that. It's just "it's me" is all that can come out. So I think it's also something that the Mimic One eventually does take over a lot of these stuff, and it's very possible what happened with David is because the Mimic One takes over Fiona's actions and does stuff. But the Mimic 2, it feels like it tries to copy a bit of David, but so early on, Murray can't take it anymore. His dead family, it's Ghost that he can't interact with properly, and he takes anger out on him, which then the Mimic takes over more of, like, while the structure of David is still there, it's just the aggressive nature, and he also takes more of Edwin on. Um, like some of the voice recorders at the end of the game, it really sounds like the sun and moon concept is just like Mimic 1 is the sun. It's kind of the one that gives life, is the one who kind of created everything, and is the one that it started everything. So Mimic 2 came as a copy from Mimic 1. And then Mimic 2 is kind of like the death slash like person that's forceful and is the destruction and destroyer, and that's what the moon represents. And Mimic 2 is very violent, and even though we have the David ending, um, that's kind of something where you like rebooted it, and as long as it gets treated like David and the whole structure continues on, it will stay as David, but it still can very much just fall back on its old things if it's taught wrongly again. Um, but yeah, it's just there's so many differences that you gotta differentiate. You gotta make sure you understand books from games. Yes, you can say, yes, Murray still existed in the books, so we knew Murray existed before the games told us. But until we get fully told by the games, you can't say that certain things are of that universe. Um, like, for example, we have yet to see the amalgamation from William Afton from the Fazbear Frights. We don't see the Stitch Wraith in the games except for Into the Pit, which is actually a Fazbear Frights game rather than a actual mainstream game. Like, for example, Fetch is sounding like it's going to be a sequel. Well, not a sequel, but a part of that game series. So you can't, we don't see Fetch in the mainstream games. So with the fact that things like Fiona dying at certain different points, sounds like David is dying in different ways. Murray dies, sounds like he's dying very early in the timeline versus in the books he dies pretty late in the timeline. You can't tell what it is until it's explained. But at the moment, I think books and games are different. Very similar to how the Silver Eyes and the Fazbear Fright fanverse the Five Nights at Freddy's world and the movies are treated. You can't say they're the same thing and say this is this, and that. It's taking a puzzle piece from this, like if you have two DC or Marvel puzzles and you're trying to solve the other one with a piece from the other puzzle, it might fit and look similar, but it's not going to make the puzzle come together properly. That is what is going wrong here. But anyways, Friday, I'm going to attempt, I cannot promise, I'm going to attempt to kind of make a new timeline for our mainstream games. And I will mention the multiverse to kind of be like, here's how we started to learn about this and know from it. And here's why we're theorizing it. But for the most part, I'm going to build with the information we know for sure from the mainstream games. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.